The year is 2025, but not the 2025 you know. There are two Americas, not united, but divided. In the North, the United States of America still stands, a technological giant, a progressive beacon. But in the South, a different flag flies, the Confederate States of America, a nation that never fell. A land where history took a different turn, where the Civil War ended, not with the triumph of the Union, but with the victory of the Confederacy. A world where Abraham Lincoln never gave his Gettysburg Address, where slavery persisted far longer, and where the global balance of power shifted in ways we can barely comprehend. But how did we get here? And what does this alternate timeline tell us about the one we live in today? Let's go back to the moment everything changed. It is July 3rd, 1863, the final day of the Battle of Gettysburg. The Confederacy stands at the edge of its greatest opportunity. In our timeline, General Robert E. Lee made a fateful decision, ordering Pickett's charge, a disastrous frontal assault against Union forces. It failed, and from that moment, the South's chances of victory crumbled. But what if Lee had chosen differently? Imagine a scenario where Lee, instead of launching a suicidal charge, uses his cavalry to flank the Union Army, cutting off their retreat. Imagine if General James Longstreet, hesitant in our timeline, aggressively pushes forward, forcing the Union into a crushing defeat. With Gettysburg lost, Northern morale shatters. Then comes the next blow. Britain and France, long on the fence, recognize the Confederacy, offering them desperately needed military and economic aid. The naval blockade imposed by the Union is broken. Without the crucial victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, Lincoln's re-election in 1864 becomes impossible. A war-weary North elects a president willing to negotiate peace. And so, by early 1865, the United States officially acknowledges the Confederate States of America as an independent nation. The war is over. But the battle for the future of North America has only just begun. The Confederacy had won its independence, but now came the real challenge: surviving as a nation. With victory secured, the Southern elite tightened their grip on power. Slavery, now enshrined in the Confederate Constitution, is not just preserved, it expands. New territories are acquired, and the dream of a Southern empire stretching into the Caribbean takes shape. Some Confederate leaders push to annex Cuba and parts of Mexico, envisioning a vast, slave-based economy. In the North, the USA, bruised and divided, enters a period of deep introspection. Some abolitionists push for war again, but political leaders insist on focusing on rebuilding their fractured country. The two Americas, once brothers, are now bitter rivals. The 20th century arrives, bringing with it war, industry, and revolution. But in this timeline, everything unfolds differently. World War I. Without a united America, Europe's balance of power remains unstable. The United States, industrially advanced, supplies weapons but stays out of the war. The Confederacy, economically weaker and diplomatically isolated, struggles to find its place. When the war ends, the USA remains prosperous, while the CSA lags behind, still dependent on an economy built on forced labor. The Great Depression and civil unrest. When the stock market crashes in 1929, the USA suffers, but eventually rebounds under progressive economic policies. The Confederacy, however, faces an existential crisis. An economy built on human bondage is ill-equipped for modern industry. Slave revolts and growing international condemnation force the South to make a choice: reform or collapse. World War II. With the rise of Nazi Germany, the world enters a new era of conflict. But in this timeline, the USA is reluctant to intervene. The Confederacy, still racially segregated and authoritarian, sees more ideological alignment with fascist powers. Though it remains officially neutral, Confederate leaders admire Hitler's racial hierarchy and even engage in limited trade. The war ends without the overwhelming force of a united America. Without D-Day, Europe's fate is uncertain. The Cold War unfolds not between the USA and the USSR, but between a democratic North and a Confederate South flirting with authoritarian rule. And so we arrive in the modern day, a world where the United States and the Confederate States have coexisted for over a century. But at what cost? The United States, though industrially superior, is no longer the world's sole superpower. China, Europe, and a resurgent Russia compete on the global stage. The Confederacy, meanwhile, has struggled to modernize. International sanctions have kept it isolated, much like apartheid-era South Africa. Racial divisions run deep, and civil unrest is constant. America's space program never reached the same heights. The Internet, born from Cold War competition, emerged later and under different circumstances. Cultural and technological progress slowed. The world is less connected, more fractured. The dream of a great American experiment, one nation, indivisible, was lost. The Civil War was not just about territory or politics. It was about the very idea of what America could be. A nation built on division, on an institution as brutal as slavery, could never truly thrive. The Union's victory in 1865 was not just a triumph of arms, but a triumph of ideals. A single, unified America shaped the world as we know it. But in this alternate timeline, where that unity never came, the world is darker, more divided. And it leaves us with a haunting question. If history had taken a different turn, would we recognize the world we live in today? America, flawed as it is, stands because it was willing to fight for something greater. And perhaps that is the lesson history teaches us most. If you found this exploration fascinating, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's keep history alive, real, and imagined.